Hello everybody, great to see you back here on the channel. Now today I want to start, if you like, a bit of a mini series, mainly discussing nightscape photography composition. Now you might say you talk about this stuff all the time. Well, I do talk about it all the time, and that is because it is so important. But what I really want to concentrate on in this series is fundamentals. You know, there is so much going on in the Astro landscape photography world relating to gear, techniques, editing, and all of that stuff that's out there that we can get so mind-boggled with all of that that we forget about the basics. And I want to go back to some of those basics that I have discussed many times in the past, but I want to try and split it up into bite-sized segments rather than just all in one long video. So I'll be talking about things like creating points of interest, multiple points of interest, leaving space to breathe in image composition, checking what's in the background, what's behind our main subject, perhaps, and creating angles, lighting, and all that sort of stuff. But today, what I want to talk about is low angle, getting down low. And I want to show you a heap of images here on the computer, and I'll just go through each one and try and explain why we might want to do that. So let's get started. Now, as a general rule with photography, the lower your camera is placed into the scene, the more the foreground becomes enhanced and becomes the center of attention in your photography. And the higher the tripod is, the more the background starts to take precedence in your image. So as you can see in this time lapse, I've got the camera right down low and almost skimming along the ground. And the reason for that is because this car is so low to the ground. And I had to try and get it up a little bit more, separated from those trees in the background. Now, when you're shooting nightscape photography, lighting helps with this as well, as you can see there, because the fact that the car is lit makes it stand out from the background. If it wasn't lit, then of course the black outline of those trees in the background would then take away the separation, because you wouldn't be able to define the back of the car. But nevertheless, what I've done is dropped the horizon line, and that's the main reason why I get my camera down low. Now you can see with all of these images I'm showing you, my attempt is to get the horizon low down and make at least some of the foreground subject matter sit above the horizon. So you can see here that Milky Way in the sky looks fantastic over the top, but it is the fact that I've got that fence and the fence post above the horizon line that really makes it stand out. Now sometimes it's really hard to do that, because whatever is in the background can easily be sort of interrupting that flow. And so I'm always looking for subject matter that I can actually get my camera nice and low. And of course, like I said before, because my camera is low down, the foreground subject is emphasized. So in this case, the tire and the wire and just the ground. I mean, it doesn't have to be a spectacular composition to look good. Now, this is a spectacular scene, no doubt about that. But I still had my camera very low down to the ground, because once again, I want to get that horizon line low in my scene. I don't want the horizon line there in the background to interfere too much with the lines of the building. Now, it is always easier to do this with a subject that somewhat stands out from the sky. And you can see there when I zoom in, there's a lot of beautiful detail. Once again, because this foreground is lit, it really does help separate from the background, because the background, the medium background, we'll say in this scene, is not lit at all. It's just a silhouette. And then of course you've got the beautiful aurora happening there, which is just marvelous. So you can see all of these images I'm showing you, and by the way, you've probably seen most of these images in previous videos, but nevertheless, look at this beautiful lantern. Now, I went to great lengths to make sure that this wire here, and at least a large proportion of the top of this post, was above this horizon line. You can see it again down here, the horizon line. Now, if that horizon line was up here, say, even to the top of that wire, it would not look as good, because the central subject of this scene is the lantern, and to a lesser extent the post and the wire. But the stars behind, the Milky Way and everything else being out of focus sort of adds, I guess, life to the image, but it's not the central theme. The central theme is this lantern. And of course, when you zoom in, you can see the detail. There's not a whole lot that's actually in focus. The fence post is sort of semi out of focus, and that's because I opened the aperture right up on this picture. But my point still stands. Now look at this. You can actually see a spider web here. Now you wouldn't really see that so well if that was hidden down here somewhere. There is a little bit of light on this scene, and because there is light on the scene, that would probably help a little bit, because spider webs are always that sort of silvery grey colour, and they do light up quite nicely. Now here's an image. It's just a random shot that I took many years ago at a photography workshop, but I still want to emphasise the fact, because my camera is down low, these 5 people are nicely silhouetted mainly against the sky. And here's a good example of the fact that we've got trees in the background down here. You can see them. Now, had I had the camera up at, well, let's say even half of my height, then this tree line is probably going to be up here somewhere around the head of these people. And I don't want that to happen, because it totally takes away the feel and vibe of the atmosphere of this image. So having the camera down low, and you can see how low it is because the ground is almost interrupting the bottom part of the scene there. Now, it's a hay bale, okay? Not a complicated composition. But if I stood up to take this image, once again, my horizon line here is going to be up here somewhere. And that totally takes away from the hay bale foreground that I really wanted to emphasize. Now, one thing to keep in mind, we're looking at this gorgeous aurora. Now, what I see all the time, people get out to shoot the aurora, for example, and this happens with the Milky Way as well, but let's use the aurora as a good example here. And they see this gorgeous glow in the sky and beauty, we'll just shoot that. But totally forget about what might be in the foreground. So, okay, the sky looks great, but the image is really made into an interesting image by whatever it is we place in the foreground. Now, a lot of times when we shoot the aurora, we will be shooting over a landscape, maybe over a seascape, and there might not be anything like this hay bale in the foreground. That might be just a larger sort of, almost like a daytime landscape photo taken at night, and then there's nothing wrong with that. That looks fantastic as well. But on this night, I'm in central Victorian Australia, nowhere near the ocean, nowhere near mountains, nowhere near anything except paddocks. And so I went in search of something to put in front of the aurora, and this is what I came up with. Nice and low down to the ground, probably about, I don't know, maybe 300 or 400 millimeters off the ground. That's where my camera was. Now this image, again, I really wanted to emphasize the Orion constellation, the nebulas around it and the stars and everything else in the sky here, but I still wanted to make this old house the point of interest. I deliberately placed it dead center in the image because, and the Orion was dead center over the top too. So everything in this image is centered, but that's okay because I really wanted to make it all stand out. Now we've got a tree here, which I like. I don't mind that. This tree I don't particularly like, but I can't do anything about it because there's a tree there. But again, nice low camera angle. See, the actual physical horizon is right down here somewhere, but because there's a bit of a tree line above that, then it does intersect somewhat with the building. So by getting my camera down really, really low, and once again, you can see how low it is, because when you start looking at this grass in the front here, I'm sort of skimming right across the top of that. You will know that if you look at the night sky, it's big in comparison to even a building like this. The building's small compared to the sky. So you will never have a problem highlighting and making the sky stand out. But you will sometimes have a problem with a foreground just not quite doing it for you. And oftentimes that's simply because the camera is too high. For example, if you're standing there at eye level, it won't have the same impact, I can guarantee you. So here we are, another really all-time favorite image of mine, this old, well, it's an old mining tank that's been converted into a water carrier. And I just love the way that the farmer has put all these different old wheels and everything on this thing. But here's my point once again. Low horizon line. I want as much of this subject to stand out above the horizon line as is possible. And you can see there, beautiful Milky Way above the main subject. And once again, the lighting does make it stand out even more. So, for example, if I was shooting this without any lighting at all and just relying on either a silhouette or perhaps ambient long exposure to give some detail in this, then I am really running the risk of losing all of the detail around this horizon line in these areas here in particular, because we're fighting between the foreground here and the background there. So adding the light just makes it stand out so beautifully. An old favourite of mine, shot many years ago, but it's still one of my favourite images to this very day. Love the silhouette of these trees in the background. Once again, the trees in the background, even though they're quite tall, they're a little bit further away from the camera, but my camera, because it's down low, does highlight the fact that I can see more of the trunk of the trees. But particularly it's the part of the old truck here that I really wanted to see above the tree line of the horizon. So keep in mind that when you're thinking about shooting these nightscape images, the horizon line isn't, unless you're shooting over a desert or over the ocean, the horizon line is never as low as it possibly can be, because you've got trees and shrubs and hills and mountains or whatever in the background. So getting the camera down low, and you can see my camera is probably down about the same level as this leaf spring at the front of the vehicle there. So that's only about 300 or 400 millimeters, if that, off the top of the ground. And you can see the grass here is actually higher than my camera is. So if I was higher, then this headlight, this radiator, this windscreen would not necessarily stand out anywhere near as much as it does in this image. Okay, here's a selfie. There's got to be a selfie in there somewhere. This is shot with an 85mm lens, and I can tell you now the camera was literally sitting on the ground because I wanted to emphasize as much of my physical shape and body above the horizon line. You can see there's a few trees in the background there, and I wanted to try and not emphasize those. So I've got Orion here, the outline with a flash on a light stand in front of me. It's just a single shot, nothing complicated about it. The hardest part about this was actually lining up the composition, so that, because I'm all there by myself, so I've just got to run back to check my composition, run into the frame, take a test shot, hope for the best. I focused, by the way, on, you'll notice there's a torch sitting on the ground here, a little flashlight. That's what I focused on, and then I stood over the top of it. That's how I made sure that I was nice and sharp. The background Orion constellation there is out of focus, but that's deliberate because I shot this with a fairly wide open aperture. Here's another one. I will say this multiple times during these videos, but this is definitely one of my all-time favorite images. I had my camera almost on the ground again, 35mm focal length, because I wanted to get this horizon line as low as possible in the scene. This is the star of the show. You might think, looking at an image like this, the star of the show is the Milky Way. Well, great, the Milky Way is fantastic, but that isn't my star. This is my star, this post. These railway spikes you can see down the bottom here. Have a look at that. Isn't that just beautiful? Now, this was a challenging photograph to take. It was windy, difficult to see what I was doing because I was running to and fro, light painting the scene. I had to do a bit of focus stacking because I was shooting at 35mm. Wanted to make sure that this fence was all nice and sharp and in focus, this barbed wire and everything else. Now, I'll let you into a little secret here. This tree in the background fits beautifully into the opening in the fence here. But I did not plan that. I couldn't even see the tree in the background when I took the shot. It's just the luck of the draw, really, that it ended up in that gap. So it's not actually interrupting any of these major foreground elements here. As far as composition goes, I did want to make sure that this central section was prominent. But I also wanted to highlight these two other posts, and you can see that's why I've actually lit them up. So I sort of staggered the image slightly off center here, but as I mentioned, it worked out beautifully because of this hole in the fence. Here's another one, centrally composed, deliberately so, and I've got Orion also over the top, centrally composed. You know, you can do that. Composition, there are many ways that you can compose an image. It doesn't all have to be sort of offset. You can centralize things, and that's okay. So I think you get the idea of what I'm trying to say. All of these images display the same techniques, getting my camera nice and low. Now this to me becomes just muscle memory. I don't think too much about it when I'm out there in the field shooting. I just roll into the situation, look at the general composition, and I just set my camera up low as possible. So there you have it. That's my little discussion about getting down low and angling into our nightscape photography. I hope you got something out of this video. I look forward to hearing and reading your comments down below this video. And in the next few weeks, we'll get onto some of those other topics relating to nightscape photography composition. Have a great week. I'll see you in the next video.